Yesterday, Wednesday, Trump basically disintegrated.
Why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner, a first question. You don't even say, hello, how are you?
He went to speak at a conference of the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago. And there were three moderators, ABC's Rachel Scott, 7/4's Kadia Goba, and Fox News' Harris Faulkner. So there's some from Fox on the platform.
I've watched the whole thing. I didn't realise up until now that she was from Fox,
Yes.
which is why that she was the only one he was remotely nice to.
Right. Yeah. And he's asked Rachel Scott from ABC, who's a very good journalist, has always been really impressive.
Was she the one who opened up?
She asks a series of questions which are actually just an inventory of the insulting things that Trump has done, said and done about people of color. And Trump, instead of realizing that he was in huge trouble.
Yeah.
Saying, well, I'm glad you asked me that,
yeah.
which is the classic political, because, I want to sort of correct some of the misassumptions that have grown. He just explodes and says, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. A first question, you don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. He goes on to call Scott's question nasty, said she'd been asked it in a hostile manner. I mean, boo-hoo,
And she was brilliant.
She was absolutely fantastic.
She just sort of sat there, smiled, carry on talking.
And he just kept on with the JCB digger, digging and saying he'd been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. One of the moderators, I can't remember which, said, "What about Lyndon Johnson?" Well, and then the pièce de résistance is, I couldn't believe it.
A follow-up question, right?
Was he accuses Kamala Harris of turning black?
Well, so she says, do you agree with these so and so Republicans saying that she was a DEI pick, right? So diversity,
equity and inclusion,
right? And he says, what's your definition of that then? Go on. And she said, well, diversity, equity and inclusion
is my definition.
Yeah. But what do you mean by that? So, and then she says, do you think she's only on the ticket because she's black? Right. And then I'll let you explain. It's the most astonishing.
He says, well, she was always of Indian heritage and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago, but when she happened to turn black and now she wants to be known as black, so I don't know, is she Indian or is she black? I mean,
something happened and she turned black.
What you're watching actually is, it's a wonderful thing, and I don't want to, I'm getting, because it's going so well for Kamala Harris, and I'm getting superstitious, right? But there's no doubt that Harris's sort of superb start has completely
rattled him,
thrown and rattled him.
Yeah.
And in being Trump, he doesn't sort of show discipline and regroup and say, right, okay, how do I take this on? He walks straight into the elephant trap, which is say lots of racist things.
Yeah.
Right? Just one after the other.
It's utterly extraordinary that he has such lack of self-awareness that he could say the phrase and then suddenly she turned black to a room full of black people, black journalists, as though it was somehow a sort of lifestyle choice.
And refer to black jobs to a room full of black journalists.
And one of the moderators said, what's a black job?
Well, and pretty soon the presidency, I think, again. But there was a very good piece by Mara Gay in the New York Times today, and it says, one reason Donald Trump may be afraid to debate Kamala Harris is that apparently all it takes to knock him off his game is a few tough questions from a black woman.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
It really is interesting. And I think that you're witnessing the disintegration of Trump. And I love the ongoing collapse of J.D. Vance, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people are sort of blaming it all on Vance. It isn't just Vance. Trump himself is in dire trouble.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to beat Harris, and he wasn't expecting her to be good.
Yeah.
And also, of course, it presents him with a series of problems, which he's just advertised in front of the world's media, which is that he is a racist.
Yeah.
And he's also, I mean, this is it might seem slightly off, but it's actually all part and parcel of the same thing. He's a horrific eugenicist.
Yes.
So I've been reading his nephew, Fred Trump's memoir, All in the Family, which arrived in the post this week. And in it, Fred Trump is the son of the late Fred Trump, who died very sadly of alcoholism. And the nephew, Donald Trump's nephew, Fred Trump, has a son who's now 25 called William, who has complex disabilities. And has had, obviously that wing of the family, it's been very expensive and he needs a lot of care and all this sort of thing. And the book is just extraordinary in its revelations about Trump's distaste for this child. He says very early on in William's life that they discover it's a genetic disorder that has caused his disabilities. And Trump says very loudly, it's not the Trump genes, it's not the Trump genes.
Jesus Christ.
And then the bit that just you can't believe, I mean, you never think Trump will surprise you, but he does. Consistently does, is that Fred Trump has a phone conversation with Donald Trump in 2020. And this is partly because Donald Trump rewrote the will of his father, Fred.
Right.
And so Fred Trump, the junior, the one we're talking about, had consistently to go and get money from the generation above him for the care of William,
son,
right?
Yeah.
And in 2020, in this phone conversation, this is in the book, Trump says to his nephew Fred about William, I don't know, he finally said, letting out a sigh. He, William, doesn't recognize you. Maybe you should just let him die and move down to Florida.
Fucking hell.
That's him talking about his great nephew.
To
the father.
Yeah.
And what's clear is, from the context in the book, is that Donald Trump doesn't think there's anything odd in that.
Yeah.
That his eugenic outlook and his racist outlook is so embedded in him that this is not an act of aggression. In fact, I mean,
he probably thinks it's a great act
he's
of
trying
compassion.
He's trying to be compassionate, which is look, and it's a horrifying read actually, because and there's revelations of more racism, and so on. But you really do get an insight into quite how twisted and damaged and
damaged
prejudiced he is.
Yeah. And you said, and it was very revealing about him, as you said, he's in a real fight now and rattled.
A serious
He said
fight.
at some point that the situation with Kamala Harris was like being in a prize fight with a guy who you were beating comfortably, and then that corner saying, hang on, wait, we want to swap our guy. Well, I'm sorry, mate, that's how democracy works.
Yes, I mean,
you've got to fight who's in front of you.
It is really rich to hear Republicans who still defend the insurrection of January the 6th accusing the Democratic Party of being undemocratic, because quite legitimately it has changed its candidate. I mean, there's absolutely nothing undemocratic about what they've done.
And yet, here's the confounding thing about American politics for me. You know it much, much better than I do. But looking at it objectively, you see all of these things and you think, how the fuck can this guy actually
still be in with a chance?
Front? Yeah, and actually neck and neck.
Yes, neck and neck. Oh yeah, I mean, look,
and there he is.
It's a toss-up. I mean, what she's got on her side, there's two things. One is that she's got real momentum, and momentum in politics is, like in sport, is just so important. And she's also, I mean, Trump is starting to look embarrassing as well as evil.
Yeah.
And in politics, embarrassing is really bad.
It's fatal, yeah.
He's beginning to look like, not the twinkly old uncle who says inappropriate things at Thanksgiving, but just yesterday's news. We're not going back I don't know who chose that, if it was her or one of her.
It's a brilliant line.
It's an inspired line.
Yeah.
It's actually a model for politics around the world.
I totally agree.
And, it'll be very interesting to see if she wins, whether it multiplies, in other countries, because it's a very good way of looking at what we've been through since 2016.
Yeah.
We're not going back.
Yeah.
Great.
Listen, that was very sort of cathartic.
Well, I'm very, very hesitant to say anything, but let's put it this way: this has been a good couple of weeks for the battle against MAGA. That's fair,
definitely. And if you like the content of this podcast, then subscribe to the New European. It's a terrific newspaper. Andrew Neil thinks it's a pointless rag, so if you want any further endorsement, then I don't know where to look, but you can subscribe from just £1 a week at the neweuropean.co.uk/2mats.